Hello everyone. So for some reason Divide by Ed Sheeran is still #1 on the official UK album chart, and it feels like all the reviews that have detailed how innocuous and trite this album is has had no effect on the UK population. As I've already semi-reviewed Divide in a video that I will link down below, I'm going to look at the #2 spot this month, and there we have the debut album Human by Rag & Bone Man, aka Rory Graham. Going into this album, I had not heard a single Rag & Bone Man song before, but I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this album. I do have some reservations about Human, but we will get to them later. I should also point out that this album comes in a standard version and a deluxe version, which has 7 extra songs on it, and I will be looking at the deluxe version in this review. What strikes me first about Human is how creative Graham's instrumental backings are. The genre of R&Pop doesn't often leave a lot of room for elaborate displays of instrumentation, but Graham fills the soundscapes with tasteful inflections of jazz, gospel, and electronic elements, not to mention his own soulful singing. Some really good examples of this being Innocent Man, that flows through sections ephemerally and with groove and flair, adding saxophone and electronic rhythmic beats at will, and album closer of the deluxe version, Healed, which swings and bounces a soulful vocalese backing against compressed drums and contemplative guitar. With all this, Graham wraps this album in a gloss of murky ambience. Just from the music, it feels like we're getting an insight into his darkened mind. The best example of this, I would say, is in the track Lay My Body Down. This track starts with dark, brooding piano and introduces some aggressive, distorted bass in the second verse, and delicately places some tension with synthetic strings over the top of the second chorus. The main takeaway from this album is that Graham really knows how to successfully put together a menacing and ominous feel to his songs, and the tightness and compositional value of these pieces put them in a league higher than what's being composed in mainstream pop at the moment. Other highlights on this album for me were Wolves, a track that comically juxtaposes a carefree backing against lyrics about trying to escape economic oppression, using the metaphor wolves at the door in a lovely, ominous chorus and bridge, and also the song Ego that just has this gorgeous piano riff and lovely gospel vocals and sax, and has a really fun chorus as well as Graham sings "Bang bang baby down you fall, ain't you Mr. Know-It-All." Despite there being a lot to praise in this album, I do have some reservations here. One of them being that while Graham's voice is lovely to listen to and he absolutely should have confidence in his singing abilities, it's mixed far too loudly in some of the tracks here. I think this is most notable on tracks like Be the Man or Love You Any Less, where there is some very nice gorgeous riffs or synth layerings going on in the background, but they're completely being squashed by how loud his vocals are. Nowadays, great singers are a dime a dozen, and so I think the Rag & Bone Man's sound should be putting more emphasis onto the creativity of the backings, or at least giving them room to breathe, as that will help him distinguish himself as an artist a lot more. You may have noticed that I haven't really talked about the lyrics on this album an awful lot so far, and that's because, on the whole, they're really bland. The cliches aren't so obnoxious that it detracts from the album heavily, but it does feel like Graham is going through a dictionary of safe poetic metaphors, and a lot of the songs end up being very lyrically shallow, and rely on the expressive feelings the instrumental backing provides in order to give the songs their emotional weight. What's a little frustrating is that there are some examples of good lyrics here. The titular hook on Your Way or the Rope is a nice portmanteau of common phrasings, and on Skin we get some really nice imagery with Graham singing "Holding me like this with poison on your lips" and "Carrying this load with wings that feel like stone," but it's a shame that these lyrics are wasted on one of the most instrumentally and melodically boring songs on the album. The point is that these examples of interesting lyricism are few and far between, and if our Rag & Bone Man really wants to improve his songwriting skills, he should be putting effort into more lyrics that are like these ones that I've mentioned, and less like ones that sound like poetry that's been submitted by an uninterested GCSE English student. One last point I'd like to make is that I'm unsure as to why there are 2 separate versions of this album, one standard version and the deluxe version with the extra songs. If you are planning on buying this album, definitely get the deluxe version, as a lot of this album's strongest material are in those extra 7 songs. But having said that, there are 3 songs in this album that I think are definitely weaker than the rest. As aforementioned, Skin is one of the more uninteresting tracks musically, but then there's also Singer Chart Fodder, Arrow, and the very meh Fade to Nothing. With these tracks taken out of the deluxe version, we're left with a solid 50-minute pop album. I will see if I can link a Spotify playlist with these tracks taken off, as I think this would present the album at its strongest. Despite these shortcomings, I really enjoyed what good there is on Human, and I would give it a solid 7 out of 10, and it's definitely a tier above what you would usually find in the charts, and I would be interested to see what Rag & Bone Man gives us next. But until then, I'll see you next time. See ya!